My name's Andy and I have bought a 1999 Porsche 996 911. If you're thinking about doing the same thing, then you're in the right spot. Today we are going to look through my ownership experience to date, which includes a bit of extra maintenance following my pretty hefty mechanics bill, my first ever check engine light, and a 2-month ownership check-in. Let's get into it. Now, you might think after my last $13,500 mechanic bill that my Porsche 996 is now a perfectly sorted, reliable daily driver. A beacon of German engineering and excellence, if you will. Well, you'd be wrong, dead wrong. Because owning a classic car isn't a single event. It's a series of unfortunate, frustrating, and usually expensive events. Let me explain. Since catching up on all of the deferred maintenance, my car has actually been back to Rubens a couple of times for a couple of different reasons. So today we're going to talk about a couple of bits of extra maintenance work that we did, as well as my first check engine light. And this is my first ever check engine light. And I mean the first ever across any car that I've owned, which have all been new until this point. If you caught my last couple of videos, you would know that the rear suspension squeak was quite unpleasant and something that I really needed to sort. It turned out to be some really old and original engine mounts, some really shoddy suspension, and some shoddy control arms in the rear. We replaced all of that stuff at, significant expense, and we were triumphant. We believed that the car would be quiet, and was quiet. But what we didn't account for was the law of automotive acoustics. See, when you silence one part of the car, the next loudest part of the car steps into the limelight. And this time, it was the control arms. So instead of the rear squeaking unbearably over a speed bump, it was now the front. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? With all of that silence in the rear, I immediately started to notice a familiar and very unwelcome squeaking coming from the front of the car. So I called up Ruben and said, whatever you did on the back, we need to do on the front. That just meant some new control arms, which going off the last time around, a couple of $100 each, and then a little bit annoyingly, another wheel alignment. Although you might be able to do the control arms on your own, you should still go and get the wheels aligned afterwards if you are going to do that. And honestly, this was pretty painless. The control arm is the same in the rear as it is in the front, and it really was a pretty quick job and not a huge amount of labour or parts cost.
Almost seemed like it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
I was just driving it in here. It's pretty heinous.
Were they a bit fucked when you took them out, the old ones?
Yeah, I'll show them to you. The same sort of thing as the rear. It seemed like someone had attempted to change the bushings and then gave up.
Gross.
Yeah. This one's not as bad, but they just are also, compressed. You can see there that they are actually starting to tear. So, it's probably not so much that you would have been hearing, but it's that tear in there, because this inner part would have started to separate from them.
And you got metal on metal.
And that should all be one piece.
So not so bad and worth it for the silence. So now let's get into my first ever check engine light. A couple of Sundays ago, I'd been invited out with some of my old friends to go for a drive. A good opportunity now that my car was sorted to, see what it's made of and go try some windy roads and really put my foot down. Everything was smooth sailing. It was the first time I'd really gotten to take the car out, and I thought we were off to a really good start. Turns out that this additional squeaking we took care of was really just the opening act for what would be a little bit more pain and suffering. Something strange happened with my car. I noticed that it almost felt like it lost half of its power, and it sort of felt like it was in limp mode. It was shifting at weird times and at really low revs. It didn't have any juice in it. So initially there was no check engine light, and it was almost frustrating because I didn't know what was going on, and at least with a check engine light, you know that you need to check the engine. Given the amount of work that was done to the car, I hadn't really driven it that much since all this work was done, I thought maybe I just needed to dust the cobwebs off of the car, and so I planted my foot at the lights, thinking that maybe I'll just shake things loose and everything would be fine. Unfortunately, that did not work, and on came a check engine light. So it was back to Rubens, who thankfully was at work that Sunday morning. His workaholic nature is very handy in times of need for someone like me. Based on the sort of the symptoms and what I described and some initial diagnostics, he thought it might be the MAF sensor or mass airflow sensor in the car. He pulled it out and it looked filthy. It was gross, and it was probably original. It had like some sort of fungus thing growing on it. It doesn't look great. A bit gunky.
That mark there, it looks like it's been hot.
Yeah, okay.
There's a bit of crap in it. We'll clean it.
See if that...
Yeah. Like I said, doing this, it's more of a diagnostic thing rather than a permanent fix. It's like if I clean it, it runs better, you know it's fucked.
And then replace that bit?
And that bit there looks a bit funny. It's sort of So the plastic's all chipped or melted or something. Something's going wrong. And the resin here is all cracked and ruined. You know, those little weird sort of fungus on it.
We love original parts.
Yeah, another one.
Another one.
I was talking to someone the other day about these cars and like how you still occasionally see original stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I just had one in there. Absolutely everything was original.
And so with what was a bit of a process of elimination, he cleaned it up a bit, put it back in the car. I did a quick lap around the block. It felt better-ish. The check engine light was kind of coming on and off. It wasn't like a permanent check engine light. It still felt like limp mode was engaged on the car. Naturally, we thought, okay, well, MAF sensor's cooked. Let's order a new one. Given this looked original on the car and it looked like absolute rubbish, so it made sense to do this. I also had a bit of travel coming up, so I didn't need the car, I didn't need to be driving it. So we ordered the MAF sensor and it came within a few days. Settles down and it seems like it's okay sometimes, and then other times it's
horrible.
Yeah, pretty horrible. But there's no check engine
overall,
today.
Like the performance has been bad.
Yeah. Oh, it feels like it's in limp mode.
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Well, I reckon this is going to do it.
What brand was in there? Bosch as well.
Bosch.
Yeah. There's some Alibaba ones for $30.
Oh, God.
They just look
I
identical.
wouldn't be doing that.
I know.
No. Pretty sensitive bit of kit, these.
Yeah.
I reckon this is going to fix it. I mean, you know, I've already smoke tested it. There's no leaks. Fuel pressure's good. You know, your ignition coils and plugs are new.
Yeah, it's got to be.
And these are a very common failure point.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if that had never been
That
replaced.
looks original.
You can tell.
It certainly looks old. You know, just the way that resin on the other side sort of, funnily enough, I've got a 997 coming in on Monday for a new MAF as well.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Should have ordered two.
I did. They're a different part though. The cable throttle cars have a different MAF to the later ones. So this is specific to Gen 1 996 and Gen 1 Boxster.
And would you believe it, the car still felt horrible. No dice, we thought it was the MAF, but we were sadly mistaken. So the hunt for the real culprit continued. And it turns out there was a traitor in our midst. Interestingly, when we got back from this not hot lap with the new MAF sensor, the car had a bit of a smell to it. There was a faint but unmistakable scent of unburnt petrol. That, coupled with the lack of power and truly appalling fuel efficiency that I'd been experiencing, led us to another suspect. So we ran the diagnostics again, and error code was coming up for an ignition coil number 6, or on the 6 cylinder. So you'll recall from the last video, we actually replaced all 6 of the ignition coils and the spark plugs. So this is kind of weird, and that's why it wasn't the first place we looked when we were having these issues, because they were all brand new. But as we sort of talked about what the symptoms of a faulty ignition coil were, things started to fall into place a little bit, and it did make a bit more sense than, say, the MAF sensor. The very rough idling, the sudden loss of power, bad fuel efficiency, the smell of unburnt fuel, it was all starting to make sense. And so we were thinking that a single brand new coil was actually faulty, or at some point in the week that it had been installed, had failed. It's interesting though, a faulty ignition coil can manifest itself in several ways, and often it makes the car feel sluggish and unreliable. Here are some of the common signs and symptoms that you should watch out for. The first one is rough idling. The engine might shake or vibrate excessively, especially when stationary. This is because one or more of the cylinders are not actually firing. Now, in a car like the 911, 996, the engine makes up a big chunk of the car and sits pretty close behind you. You do really feel that rock and roll. For me, it actually was quite an aggressive idle, and I feel a bit silly that I didn't immediately notice that difference. You can also expect a loss of power and even acceleration. It'll feel like it's struggling to gain speed and even shifting quite a bit earlier than it normally would or should. Then you want to watch out for misfires. The engine might skip or hesitate, especially under acceleration. You might even hear a popping sound from the exhaust. Most obviously, although not really for me, is that check engine light. A faulty ignition coil should really trigger a check engine light, and there are specific diagnostic codes that will point directly to which cylinder and ignition coil is causing the issue. And so in my case, didn't, and then it did come on, and then it went off, and then it came on. So it was a bit of an unreliable indicator for me personally. In addition to using your eyes and ears, you should also use your nose. If you do smell unburnt petrol, gasoline, whatever you want to call it, especially from the exhaust, then that is a telltale sign that fuel is entering the engine but not being ignited properly. You could also experience difficulty starting the car. That wasn't something that I experienced, but it can be harder to start the car. It might crank for a bit longer than usual, so watch out for that. And finally, one that I overlooked, based probably on the age of the car, but also how I drove it, and that is very poor fuel efficiency. When a cylinder isn't burning fuel properly and efficiently, it will consume more fuel to produce the same amount of power. That leads to worse mileage or kilometerage. Now, I'd had a gut feeling that my fuel efficiency was pretty bad. I'd mentioned it a few times to Ruben over the weeks. With all the work that he'd done, it sort of started to improve, and I thought with a little bit more time, it would get better. I was also cautious that most of my driving is sort of on the shorter side, so 20 to 30 minute trips, and the fuel efficiency really isn't great over shorter drives. It's much better over longer drives, as you might know, especially things like freeway driving. But it did sort of always feel bad, and looking back, it's really easy to see that it was a major sign that maybe something else was wrong. But it could also be something that old and needing to be replaced MAF sensor could be contributing to. In fact, it's very likely that my pure fuel efficiency is due to a combination of very old MAF sensor and this faulty ignition coil. And so I share all of these symptoms because they're not normal and they are things to watch out for. If you are experiencing, a dodgy ignition coil, then you need to deal with it, and you need to deal with it pretty quickly. It can lead to more serious issues if it's not addressed, and it's a pretty horrible experience to drive a car in that state. With a new MAF sensor not solving the problem, we ordered a new ignition coil, which was to replace the old new one, and that took a little while to sort of track down and get in stock, but we did manage to find one within a few days. Just like the MAF sensor, installing the ignition coils is a relatively quick job, especially if you have a hoist. It's more of a wild inconvenience than anything else. For example, the ignition coil turned up, but then we had to wait for a hoist to free up at Ruben's shop because he had a few other cars that he was working on, and you're not going to take a car off a hoist for a 5-minute job to replace something that you just replaced, which is fine by me, but it just sort of talks to the inconvenience that something seemingly not that expensive and not that hard to do can multiply. But super quick job, pretty much the definition of a bolt-on or plug-and-play part, and once we put it in, cleared the codes, they didn't come back, and everything was running fine.
Yeah.
See if I can do this without burning my hands. We might need to wait 10 minutes.
Hot?
Yep. Feels hot from here. So will there be any sort of sign that this is fucked, or it's just going to put a new one in and it'll work?
Yeah. It's amazing the difference that 5-10 minutes makes to not scalding your hands. Well, admittedly, I am shotgunning this a little bit, but I find it hard to believe it's going to be anything else, given that the rest of it's up to scratch.
Well, all the symptoms are sort of
there.
Like the rough idling, the burnt smell.
Specifically one cylinder misfire logged in it.
Yeah, all that's missing is, I think, stalling.
Yeah.
Which it feels like it's idling so long, it does feel like
it wants to.
At some points, and you go, ooh, it feels like it wants to stall, which is worrying.
Yeah, like if you pulled up the satellites too quickly, it maybe would.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
That'd be trauma. Having the car on the hoist was a good opportunity to check for any leaks or anything else that was going on. Thankfully, nothing obvious was showing. Unfortunately, I did make the mistake, though, of mentioning a flappy rattle that I'd been hearing from the right-hand side. It sort of sounded a bit tinny. It was a little bit hard to explain, and it was definitely worse in the cold. So out came Ruben's stethoscope, and we sort of got to work trying to figure out what this sound was. If you know, or if you've experienced this in your 996, I'd love to know. I'd love to hear about it.
It's not misfiring. Sounds like you've got a rattling heat shield or something.
Maybe that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. You hear that? Off throttle?
Yeah.
Look at that over here. You hear that?
Yeah.
Make sure that bracket's tight.
I'm getting it around here.
Yeah.
But that's me. Isn't the exhaust right? Like when you hit that moves this way.
It almost sounds like it's in the muffler. So the actual mounting studs are tight. sounds like it's over here.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's thin sheet metal.
Yeah.
Which that would be the only sort of bit.
It doesn't look like any of the heat shields are touching the muffler. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But it sounds with the stethoscope. It's really loud around there.
It's not that circle bit touching the top.
Yeah. No, it's clearance there.
It sounds like there's a thin piece of metal flapping into another.
It does.
It doesn't sound like a heavy, thunky.
No, that does move a fair bit over here.
Yeah, it does. So
that's fucked enough that it's just touching.
It doesn't vibrate all the way down though. The connection here.
Whatever is in here.
Yeah.
Which looks maybe like some sort of rubber metallic bushing or something.
Yeah. Do you reckon it's an issue or?
It's not going to affect the way it runs or anything.
One sound goes and another one comes.
As far as we could tell, it seems to be in one of the mufflers, and it could just be like a loose baffle or something. It's a job for another day. I think if we do any exhaust work, or if we have an excuse to take the bumper off and get close to the exhaust again, then we'll deal with it. It's not something I'm rushing to, or I think I'd need to rush to fix at this moment, especially given the amount of work that we've just done. This exhaust rattle is a problem for future Andy. We put the car back down, turned it on, cleared the codes, and did a nice lap of the block. It seemed to be sorted. As you can see, Ruben was really happy with how everything was running and driving at this point. The codes did not and have not come back since.
It's like half throttle.
Yeah.
I think these real early 996s, they have for whatever reason, have a slightly better sort of induction in your bark than the later ones. I don't know what that's all about, but you really hear it behind your head. It feels good.
Yeah. Happy?
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
You know what I hate about these Tiptronics? The way it's like, if you give them a bit of a squirt, they just keep holding gears.
Yeah. And you just like, keep going.
It's like, I'm on shift, I only wanted to do that once.
Yeah.
Like, we're still in third. Come on.
But I also kind of think it's...
There we go.
Second and third are the best gears in this car.
Yeah. We'll do one more lap, just make sure, but pretty confident. These shocks are good, aren't they?
Yeah, they're great. They're actually great everyday shocks.
Yeah.
And it sits at such a good height.
And they're almost completely soft the way I've set them, but you can make it a lot stiffer.
I've not scraped anything yet, which I'm impressed with.
Good.
Oh, it's idling way better. It was like dipping below 1,000.
Yeah, okay.
Up here. It's almost like you're choking the car.
Certainly seems happy just off idle. It's good. Yeah, it feels good when we're stationary too.
Yeah, it was
Rough, particularly in gear, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Don't have the smell.
The sulphury smell.
Yeah. Smell like you're driving behind a truck.
It's unburned fuel going through a cat and it's coming out like that.
It turns out it was just a faulty new part, and these things happen. Now, given that my bad fuel efficiency was under the microscope, we thought it would be a good idea to leave the MAF sensor in the car and see if it makes a huge difference. Ruben was very kind and said, leave it in for a week. If it makes a noticeable difference, then keep it. If not, give it back and I'll keep it as stock. Given the condition of the old one, I mean, to me, it makes sense to just replace it and leave it in the car. At some point, it's going to go, and I'm going to have to get him to order another one in and then wait and then do it. So I may as well just do it now. Call that a bit of preventative maintenance on my part and responsible Porsche ownership. And yeah, given this false alarm with the MAF sensor in the first place, it just makes sense to just do it. Of course, you can order this part and do it yourself. But given that this was a bit of a trial and error situation, I was more than happy for this to be a Ruben job. There you have it. My very first check engine light in my 26-year-old 911 had nothing to do with the fact that it was from 1999 and everything to do with a faulty 2025 part. To be honest, although it was inconvenient, it is a bit of a relief. So let's catch up on the running total of work on the car. Up until this point, my last bill was about 13,500 Australian dollars with the 2 new control arms and the MAF sensor, which was actually very expensive, around $650. We've added another $1,800 to my running bill. It's a reminder that this is not just a car, but it is a financial commitment. And as I promised last time, I'm not going to milk the content too much. Let's chuck in an ownership check-in. It's been about 2 months since I picked the car up, and I've gone through all of this work and all of these hiccups, so why not check in to see how I'm going with the car? These trials and tribulations are just part of the journey, and part of it I'll just chalk up to learning about my car. How is it working out for me? I think there are 3 main areas to look at. How practical is it? how reliable is it, and how fun is it? How practical is a 911? Well, I don't have kids, but I do have dogs. There's enough space in the car to do more than enough groceries and to cart one of my dogs around, which I've had to do a few times now. But there's really no chance in hell that I'd fit both my big dogs in the car. If you've got smaller dogs, you might fit them in the back seat. I have 2 Samoyeds, so that would pose a bit of a problem, but we have another car in the house, and so that is the dog car. We've covered it in this video, but fuel efficiency until I replaced the ignition coil and the MAF sensor was pretty bad. It's actually significantly improved. When I picked the car up and drove it back, it was sitting at around 5.4 kilometers per litre, which is heinous. It's now sitting at about 8.5 with the new MAF sensor. So 8.5 kilometers per litre, which is, not too bad. Not too bad for a 26-year-old sports car. I could fit about a week of groceries in the front of the car, which is, plenty of space. And of course, there's the back shelf as well if I have anything extra. Of course, anything large is going to be problematic, and it's not really the best car for that. The other thing is the car is a little bit lower than I'm used to, and so I'm still sort of figuring out an elegant entrance and exit from the car, but I'm sure with time I'll get there. As far as usability, the car does have all of the creature comforts that I think I really need, especially with the updated head unit and reversing camera. That said, the new head unit has been a bit temperamental and spotty at the best of times. This doesn't feel like it's exclusive to my car. In fact, the last couple of new cars that I had pretty major issues with the infotainment systems and the head units, so it's a little triggering when it happens. I feel like the reality of wireless CarPlay in particular is that it just doesn't work all the time. But the car itself is really easy to drive. It's really easy to park. I probably don't need a reversing camera because you can really see each corner of the car quite clearly. The doors are quite long though, so you have to give a little bit of thought about where you park just to get enough space to open the door so that you can kind of get out as gracefully as possible. I am reminded of my 3-door Golf GTI that had these really long doors, and it was an absolute pain to sort of shimmy in and out of if someone parked too close next to you, but I think that's a small price to pay for such a beautiful car. I'm also like a big fan of the ride height and the way that Ruben has dialed in the suspension. It's really comfortable, and I've had not a single issue with the scraping the car, and I have a very steep driveway, so I'm very impressed with the ride height. I'm also loving the heated seats. We're sort of leaving the cooler months here in Melbourne, and they are a very welcome addition, especially early in the morning if I head out to the gym. And finally, reliability. Well, you've watched the start of the video. There's been a few hiccups, but I mean, the car starts every time. I'll call that a win. The first check engine light that I've experienced was not related to the age of the car, and it was simply a bad new part installed. This back and forth with Ruben the mechanic is mostly a result of that. Given the extensive amount of work that he did do at the start with this car, I've also learned to expect that there is a bit of back and forth and dialing in when you do so much work to a car, and you should really go in with the expectation that, there'll be a bit of inconvenience around it, and there'll be a bit of a learning curve, and there'll be a bit of like an adjustment period as you kind of figure things out. And honestly, I've said it before, but I would prefer a mechanic who is on the conservative side when it comes to fixing things and takes his time rather than just throws every part in the kitchen sink at it, only to leave you with a massive bill. And I have to say, I've never enjoyed spending money on a car like this. It feels like it's going to a good and righteous cause, and I genuinely have a connection with the car, and I really do love it, and I'm happy looking after it and putting the effort and the work into really making sure that it's the best version that it can be. I should probably do that with myself. Every trip to the mechanic, I've learned something new. It's an opportunity to spend time with Ruben, who's a great guy, but also get on the forums, get on Google, and sort of figure out, what are these problems? What causes them? What could the potential fix be? What are the potential parts I'll need? And then really learn about what these parts do and what role they play in the orchestra that is a Porsche 911. Of course, there's this channel as well, which has been great. The response has been really, really cool. There's been people in similar positions or looking to get a 911, reaching out to me and asking how it's going, or appreciating this sort of resource that I am creating. It's been fun for me to push myself in this direction as well. So overall, I would have to say it's a privilege. It is a privilege to be in a position to buy this car. It is a privilege to be in a position to, cover the maintenance. It's a privilege to be in a position to have another car in the house that I can use if this car is busy. It's a privilege to have the patience and time to work through these things, and I'm very aware of that. And every time I look back at the car, I do feel proud. I feel proud to own it, and I really do love this car. And most importantly, I'm excited to drive this car. Every trip feels planned out. It feels purposeful. You don't just jump in the car and speed off. You get in, you bring it to temperature, you figure out where you're going to go, you figure out where you're going to park, you figure out these logistics, and you're really thinking about the car and that experience, and you're not thinking about what podcast you're going to listen to or whether or not you want your vented seats on. And I like that. And every time I turn back and see the car, I really kind of have to pinch myself, and I can't really believe that it's mine and it has my initials on the plate. And so for now, the car is perfectly sorted. I've probably just jinxed myself. I'm hopeful that that's the end of this saga. If it's not, then I might have to start charging the car rent. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow along for the journey.